are the x and y intercepts for the graph of 4x minus 2y equals negative 8. There's two ways you can do this one. I'm going to do it, I think, the way that most of you will get it right. So I'm actually going to go graph this on some graph paper, and then we're going to look at the answer, okay? So 4x minus 2y equals negative 8. In order to graph this, I have to get it in y equals mx plus b. All right, so for me to get this in y equals mx plus b, I need to get y by itself. So I'm going to draw my wall and cover up my y. So we need to move this 4x. It's subtracting, but the 4x itself is positive. So the opposite of adding or plus 4x is minus 4x. And what you do to one side, we're going to do to the other. All right, and when you have 4x, take away 4x, those are going to cancel. So now I'm left with negative 2y equals negative 4x minus 8. Okay, so the only thing you have left to do now is divide this negative 2 that was touching the y, because remember, if they're touching, they're multiplying. Opposite of multiply is to divide. So this is going to be y equals negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2x. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is going to be positive 4. And this is my line that I'm trying to find the x and y intercepts for. So if you know this is your line, you can go graph this line and look at your graph to find the x and y intercepts. So remember, this is your first way of doing it. I will show you a second way. So let's go to a graph. I don't have any graph paper with me, so I'm going to do mine up here. I'll make sure I do it really neat though. Alright, so our line has a base of 4, and then the slope is 2 over an understood 1, right? Remember, it's a rise over a run. If there's no run, it's over 1. So I'm going to go up to 4 on my y-axis because it said y equals, so up 1, 2, 3, 4, put a point. And then my slope is up 2 over 1. And I can't go up 2 over 1 anymore, but I can come back to my base and do the opposite. So I'm going to go down to left 1, down to left 1. And I'm going to connect these points right here. Alright, so if we look at this graph, we're trying to find the x and the y intercepts. Remember, your y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So look at our red line. It crosses the y-axis right here at this point, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, it's a y-intercept, so 0 is the x, 4 is the y. The x-intercept is where this graph is going to cross the x-axis. So if we look right here, our x-intercept is where my red line touches the orange, and this is at left 2, so negative 2, 0. So there's your x and y intercepts if you do it by hand by graphing. I think this is probably the way that most of you should choose to do it, because you should feel comfortable with graphing a line. Alright, so the shortcut way, I'm going to do it really quickly. We just talked about an x-intercept. The y value will be 0. And a y-intercept, the x value will be 0. So I'm going to call this the shortcut. Alright, so for an x-intercept, let's see, I'm going to make my x-intercept green. For an x-intercept, the y value, so everything right here with this y, is just going to be 0. Which means all we're left with is 4x equals negative 8. So then I can divide the 4, and for my x-intercept, I should get negative 8 divided by 4, which is negative 2. And remember, the y value is 0 because it's an x-intercept. Okay? For my y-intercept, And y'all bear with me. I'm looking for another color. For my y-intercept, the x value is 0 because we're trying to find y, right? So once I make this whole x term 0, I'm left with negative 2y equals negative 8. And then I can divide by negative 2. Those will cancel. And the y value you get when you do negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4. And remember, that's the y. So you get the same thing if you do the shortcut method where you put 0 in for y to find the x-intercept and where you put 0 into x to find the y. But I also got the same thing when I just graphed it and did it by hand. So either way you do it, you should get the right answer. I do think this is probably the best way for y'all to do it on your DCA. Okay? All right, last question on the non-calculator. So the function g of x is represented by the table and f of x is graphed. All right, so I'm just going to go label g of x is this table. And they said f of x was the graph, and they've already got that up there for you. So between these two, it says what is the distance between the y-intercepts? All right, so what I did for this one, again, the y-intercept from this graph should be really easy to see. So remember, the y-intercept is where this line touches the orange at. Okay? So if we go find where that line touches the orange, does everybody agree it's right there at 0, 2? So this y-intercept is going to be the point 0, 2. Now, the y-intercept for this table is going to be hard to find from the table. But what could we do with these points? Yeah, we can go graph them, right? So I'm going to make a graph again, and I'm going to graph these ordered pairs. Let's see, this was number 5. Keep my work organized. All right, and this is number 6. Okay, so if we look at our ordered pairs that they gave us in the table, the first one is the point 3,5. So I'm going to go over 3 and start at my origin. I'm going to go over, I'm going to use blue, 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my first ordered pair. And then the second ordered pair they gave me in this table was 7, 13. That means I start back at home base. I'm going to go over 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So right here at the top of my graph. Okay, so to find our y-intercept, couldn't I just extend this line and see where it touches the y-axis? Yes, we should be able to. So if I'm going to extend this line, I need something with a straight edge, so I'm going to use my phone. And this will be much better if you do use graph paper, because I already messed up. Because I'm trying to do it without graph paper. Alright, so if I connect this line, it does look like it's going to cross the y-axis at 0, -1, right? But to make sure, I'm going to go back and use my table and check to make sure that it does in fact cross at 0, -1, because we're going off of my drawing on notebook paper, which is not graph paper. So on your DCA, make sure you use your graph paper for this one. So in this table, do y'all agree that my rate of change is going up by 8 on this side and up by 4 on this side? Which means the slope is 8 over 4, which equals 2. So if I go back and check my graph, That means my graph should be going up 2 over and understood 1. So let's go back and look at our graph. So this goes up 2 over 1. That looks good. And if we're working backwards, that means we can go down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. So it does in fact cross at 0, -1. So my y-intercept for my table is 0, -1. Okay? And my y-intercept for this graph is 0, 2. So when they ask you for the distance, I'm hoping you guys learned this in middle school. To find the distance between two numbers, you always take the bigger number and you subtract the smaller number. So which number is bigger, -1 or 2? 2, so I'm going to do 2 minus my smaller one was -1. And what happens when you have a negative times a negative or minus a negative? It's going to turn into a positive, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So this is probably the problem on the non-calculator that takes the most time, but if you guys would just go graph this table by hand and connect it with a ruler, you'll get the right answer right away. And then all I did was subtract 2 minus -1 to get my distance of 3. So this is the end of the calculator inactive. Make sure you go study this and you rework problems along with this video, because we can definitely get 100 on this section.